Hey friends, this is Joseph Maynor. So I decided to come here to the Link in Las Vegas for a few nights. It's my birthday, and I had this planned, months in advance. So, uh, you know, here we are. So I'm here and Center Strip, which is a different experience. Center Strip in Vegas, for those of you who have never been to Las Vegas, is much more like urban, right? Kind of reminds me of like a big city versus downtown or South Strip or other parts of Las Vegas. So I've only been Center Strip twice. Once I stayed at the Flamingo, and now I'm staying at the Link. So it's a different experience. It's cool. It's different, right? It's more like impersonal in a way that San Francisco is impersonal, and cosmopolitan. Like, every kind of finite perspective, right? From riffraff to billionaire, right? Is here. So I love coming here for that very reason, right? It's one of my favorite cities to visit, Las Vegas. So what I want to do in this video, though, is I want to continue on with what I've been talking about. And I think one of the big themes of really all of this is this concept of like patience and humility, and why like enlightened masters are patient and humble, like the true ones, why they have that. Now, it's not always because they're enlightened. I mean, it could just be that's their personality, right? But let's say that they did like mold themselves over time. Like they learned something from life and they were able to make a change in themselves. Like we look to embodiment in enlightenment teachers, don't we? I mean, it's really hard to sell yourself. It's easy to fake yourself too, right? That's the other issue. So that, and there's corruption in anything. So even with enlightenment teachers, like there's going to be people who, like, you missed your calling being a classic car collector or a whatever. You know what I mean? Like you're not a spiritual enlightenment teacher. Like, I'm glad that you resonate with spiritual enlightenment, but you're not really good at being a spiritual enlightenment teacher as a finite perspective. But then you look at people who are spiritual enlightenment teachers as a finite perspective and you realize this teaching doesn't capture everything. There's something missing in this. Like, no teacher can give you the answer. Just like if you're trying to become a musician, no musician can teach you how to be you as a musician. If you want to become great at chess, no teacher can teach you how to become a great you at chess. I mean, yes, you can study with Garry Kasparov, as Hikaru did, I think. Great chess people, they study with other chess masters to learn from them. But, if you don't develop your own, like, you got to have confidence in yourself to be a great chess player. Because you're going to get confused. People are going to fuck with your instincts, right? People are going to play openings and defenses and variations that they think will throw you off balance. And, like, so, but it's like that in anything in life. It's almost like the relation between order versus and chaos. Like, how much can we rely on order? How much can you really rely on theory and being a great chess player? What's the percentage there? Is it like 70-30? Is it 50-50? Right? Like, so if you look at like a chess player like Bobby Fischer, how much of that was like preparation versus thinking on your feet? And the same can be said for any kind of subject. I mean, every like math major takes the same classes, but what separates a genius at mathematics is challenging something that like nobody else sees, or being able to play at a level that like nobody else plays. Ditto for every kind of specialty in life. There's some people that could make the best red beans and rice in Louisiana, and there's some people who have contributed to other fields from a finite perspective. So to the extent that you're identifying with the finite perspective, people do have different strengths and weaknesses in that vein. But ultimately, spirituality is not a specialty. If you relegate spirituality to a specialty, I think you cheapen spirituality. Because you're not a specialty entirely. In part, you are. And this is why I think it's important to understand this aspect of ourselves that is a specialty. You're a specific taste that not everybody is going to like. To want to be the taste that everybody likes, you know what that turns you into? That turns you into a douchebag, right? That turns you into the guy who's like, wants to be liked by everybody, wants to be accepted by everybody, but doesn't have an original bone in his body. See, doesn't stand on any principle. And ultimately, he's liked but disliked in equal measure. Because although he's famous and popular, nobody actually genuinely likes him. Versus the guy that like maybe nobody likes, but he likes himself. Right? The guy that nobody likes, but he likes himself a lot. Now this can be easily converted into thinking that this person is a narcissist, but oftentimes that's projection on somebody else having a grievance, right? So the people who we have grievances toward, that's more a function of us than it is of them, right? It's our narrative, our grievance narrative that we're trying to support to give ourselves a feeling of self-esteem and power and hope and optimism looking toward the future. We feel like we're in control and that we're telling somebody else where their deficits are in relation to us. We feel like we're standing our own ground. Boy, isn't that an illusion? Does that work out? How well does that work out in reality? Well, it's hit or miss, right? It just depends. Depends on karma. Depends on what happens. But it could succeed just as much as it can fail. Because what you really lack is you lack the perspective to realize that every finite perspective is selfish, including you as a finite perspective. You never look at you, right? You're always looking externally for the threat or for the error. You check in the back of the book for the answer, right? Instead of realizing, no, the error is deeper, way deeper than that. The error is way deeper than checking the back of the book for the answer. That's so shallow. You know, I used to be really against this deep metaphor, this, metaphor of depth, because it is kind of a physical metaphor. It's a space and time metaphor. And I thought, a lot of people hide their abstraction behind depth. And we've seen this abused over and over and over again. So philosophers throughout history have been very sensitive to, being skeptical of depth. Sometimes you can get too skeptical of depth, where you become one of these people that, like, they're totally confused. They have no intellect at all, right? They're a one-trick pony, right? And it's not even a thoughtful trick. It's like a physicalist trick. Okay, well, that's what you do. You're an acrobat, or you're a, showman of some type. But that doesn't mean that you capture all the goodness that every finite perspective can capture. The idea that, like, we're, like, infinitely talented, I mean, it's like yes and no. On some level, yes, but on some level, God, no, right? I mean, to say that I'm talented with, schmoozing is ridiculous. I mean, I could care less about that. I mean, I might be talented in that unknowingly, but it's not something that I value. So, but then again, what I value is a secondary issue as to what's expressed. I mean, think about everything you value. Does that come to be in your life? It's like yes and no, right? I mean, if we could all, like, execute what we value, we would all be billionaires. If we could all, and then the people who are billionaires, they're not executing what they value. That's just their finite perspective from your perspective as a witness. That's what's being revealed, right, as that finite mode for you, as the watcher, the witness, and a participator. It's like the person who never dresses for PE, right? And then they're like complain that they get punished. Well, it's like, no shit, because you can't exactly escape into the absolute. Like, you're always in part a finite perspective, even though you hate your life. And you're the kind of person who, like, doesn't participate in life, right? You're like but that's your karma. See, that's the thing. This issue of karma, I don't think a lot of people really understand this, but karma is the narrative within your life that you're observing, you're participating in. Maybe we can title this video, "What is Karma?" Because I've been using that word lately, and it means different things than what people tend to associate karma with, like a moral connotation. But actually, karma means something deeper than that. Karma means how the dream moves and how the parts interplay together, and how identifying with a part will yield a certain kind of fate, a karmic existence, or an existence in samsara, an existence as the jiva, and how one can awaken from karma into moksha, or liberation, liberty versus justice. This is interesting because in Stage Orange actually values liberty over justice. Notice that. Stage Blue values justice over liberty. But notice that moksha means liberation. It doesn't mean justice, right? We're not looking for a just universe. We're looking for liberation, freedom, right? Freedom is valued over morals. What is freedom? Does freedom involve power? Or is freedom a way to exit power? Or maybe it's both and. And maybe it's neither, right? Not even. So this not even concept I got from Phil, from Actuality of Being, actually. He influenced me with that, and I'm going to give him credit for that. The not even thing. Yes, no, and not even. Like, so that, I got to give him credit for that. The not even part. Yes, no, and not even. Both and not even. Man, that's a conjunctive phrase. And it's so instructive because it's a way of making space. So anyway, I'm going to take a break. I'll come back. We'll do the second part of this video and shooting it here at the Link in Las Vegas. So very cool property, very vast property right in the center of the Strip. I'm going to have so much fun today just exploring around. So I'll come back and we'll continue on. Just give me 1 second. All right, friends, I'm back. So let me start this discussion. Let's jump a little bit deeper, or dig a little bit deeper, trying to use the right metaphor. It's like that book, Metaphors We Live By, right? But anyway, so don't we tend to want to think of ourselves as in control, moral, and trying to live a happy, hopeful life? Like, doesn't that which generates your spirituality as a finite perspective almost capture your need to be able to be okay with existing? To have some kind of hope or some kind of belief that the future is going to be better than the present. And that's actually a source of power that creates a lot of your everything, right? So you as a finite person, think about this, okay? You as a finite perspective, needing to feel like life is worth living and that you have some kind of a hope that the future is going to be bright on some level, even if you have to create that some way spiritually or some other kind of way, right? But the mistake you make is that you think that that need to create the power to exist is necessary entirely. And that if you were to let that go, actually, it wouldn't have any effect at all. And see, this is what Maharishi talks about when he talks about snuffing out the I thought. Because when you snuff out the I thought, if that's possible, then nothing changes. The movie doesn't change when you disidentify with it. It stays the movie, and you stay the watcher. The mistake you make is you identify with the movie. You think the movie is real. See? That's Advaita Vedanta. Advaita Vedanta is teaching you, no, the movie, like it runs on its own. Karma runs on its own. It has nothing to do with you as the witness, as consciousness. And to be able to really solidly see this, I don't like to use the word awakening, but I'm becoming more amenable to it actually, because I'm realizing that but then that's just my finite perspective spouting off as to what words mean, you know. All we can really be, we're engaging in show and tell in a way. All we can really be is like a model for another person who's on this same path. It's like all a musician can really be for another musician is an influence, somebody who is a model. But ultimately, the goal is for the musician to find their own voice, right? And or a chess player, you know, you study all over the place, but when it comes to performing, so there's a difference between like practicing and performing. Performing is different than practicing. Practicing is preparation. Performing is, let's see what you got. Let's see what you can do. And but then there's a witness that's watching the preparing and the performing that doesn't seem to change. Consciousness, maybe. But then also there's an identification with the finite perspective too that we can't necessarily shake. Those of us who think we can shake that, they just have shadow problems, right? Huge shadow problems. Like they're like mind blind in a way. Like they don't even like recognize their own ego. So it's got to be like a more nuanced solution. But then you can get way out into la la land where like you're analyzing dreams and stuff like that Spinoza would consider to be the imagination, but maybe that's important, right? That's the feminine, the unconscious. The masculine gets way too arrogant with regard to thinking he found the one right answer for things. So, like, there's this paradox between kind of like relaxing and surrendering and detaching and thinking. Like there's a marriage there. There's a deep marriage there between those. And it's not at all clear how to resolve that paradox. And, maybe the solution is not to resolve it. I like yes, no, and not even, right? 1, 2, and 3. Bada boom, bada bing, right? Sometimes, right? It's the issue of sometimes. The masculine doesn't like sometimes. The masculine wants always. But it's like sometimes one spice is better than another spice. It just depends on what you're doing. So like the feminine is always like, it's not about like intellect, it's about spur of the moment and finding the right mixture with regard to spur of the moment. But we all know what happens to people who appear to live by spur of the moment, don't we? It's like the smart people are more calculated than that. But then are you a person? Why are you identified with either or neither? Does it matter? Does it matter what you think or what you do? I don't think there's like actually one. I think like once you like mouth off a perspective, that becomes a finite answer. So your awakenings are really just finite expressions of something that you've experienced deeper. But to put it into terms is going to and I don't like to be the kind of person who thinks that just because you put something into terms that necessarily makes it relative or finite. But it's like, that's kind of true on some level. That once you put something into terms, it becomes a pointer, but it's like helpful and hurtful in equal measure. Because what's communicated isn't synonymous with existence. We know this because we can say all kinds of things that aren't true, that don't become true. Like, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that. I'm not going to be an asshole anymore. I'm going to quit drinking coffee. I'm going to get a PhD. I'm going to be a great husband. I'm going to be a great spiritual teacher. We have these like ideals. We're able to like signal, like virtue signal, but then our follow through is weak, right? Unless it's a strong area for us. Some of us are very strong in something. But then, if you're very strong in that, is it right to take credit for that? Is that you that did that? So if you're Magnus Carlsen, did Magnus Carlsen become Magnus Carlsen at chess because he like worked harder than everybody else? Or was that just his strength? He did it effortlessly, like somebody who knows about anything, any subject, any finite subject, including spiritual enlightenment. Now, this gets into a really challenging thing. Is spiritual enlightenment a finite thing, a finite subject? When we talk about spiritual enlightenment, whether we're talking about love or truth or knowledge or power or hope or relation, I mean, are we just giving a finite perspective about something that at best could be construed to be a pointer? Or are we stating something absolute? Like, I'm going to give you the truth, man. Here's the truth. And I'm going to give you like a paragraph. And there you go. Go live your life. Don't ever complain ever again. Like, I gave you the truth. Go do it, right? Like, what's the both and between those? Like, how can a finite perspective communicate the absolute? How can the absolute be communicated through the finite perspective? There's got to be a little bit of like one and the other, because that's a conceptual kind of scheme. And do conceptual schemes like link up in a one-to-one way with reality? Not entirely. I think this was the defeat of rationalism. The defeat of rationalism is that oftentimes it's over-analysis where you miss reality, or you miss love, or you miss something, or something is missed. So it's like people aren't stupid. Like, reactions happen for a reason. People react, people aren't thinking enough. Okay, think more. People are reacting, people aren't feeling enough. Feel more. People are reacting, people aren't being enough. Be more. People are reacting, people aren't like conscious enough. Be more conscious. So it's like, and even be more stupid, right? But that's more implied than it is expressly stated, because every ego wants to survive. And this is a very wise thing that I've noticed, like certain people have really started to see, that every perspective is necessary on some level. Like, you're not doing it by yourself. This idea that like, I did it my way, I did it by myself, this kind of stage orange individualism. No, dude, you didn't do anything by yourself. Like, we're all intricately embedded in reality. Whatever happens just as much outside of you as it does inside of you, if you want to think about it that way. And also, not you. Like, you're watching a movie. Imagine you're John Lennon, right? You lived the life of John Lennon. Do you think John Lennon did something to deserve that life? No, he was just a middle-class kid in England at a time when, that was his dream and our dream, actually it's our dream with him in it. It's a movie that we have, a John Lennon movie that we have, right? And there might be something symbolic to that, there might not be, and it may be both and neither, right? So, both and not even. See, 1, 2, 3. It's not 1 over 3. It's 1 and 2 and 3 and neither. See, you don't want your mind to get locked or your embodiment to get locked. Okay, friends? So thank you. It's nice to be here in Vegas. I hope to enjoy a few days here, and I'll talk to you probably again before I leave. If not, have a great week. Take care.